Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We're about to get started here, so thanks for joining us today. I'm Vicki St. Clair. I'll be your moderator. And today we're talking about what it takes to be the project manager that people want managing their projects. And who better to share insight on that than Aquent Federal's Jessica Adams. She's developed a great reputation in the creative field with colleagues, and I'll introduce our guest speaker in just a moment. First, I want to thank Aquent Federal for hosting the webcast. Those who already work with Aquent Federal know Aquent as your go-to agency. They've been around for more than 30 years, and they create digital, creative, and marketing solutions in all media. They produce across all platforms, and they're known for their ability to quickly scale up and down depending on project needs and business demands. So a great company to be connected with if you're not already. All right, let's introduce our guest speaker. You can see from her bio here that, well, this is just a short snapshot, I should say, of her bio. She brings more than 16 years of experience to the table, and I'm not going to read all the way through this, but I did talk with a couple of people who've worked with Jessica, including a client, and that client said until she worked with Jessica, she had no idea what difference the PM made to the success of a project. Now, of course, she doesn't want to work with anyone but Jessica. So I think that speaks volumes in itself, and you know you're in good hands today. I also spoke with a vice president who's worked with Jessica, and he said that critical thinking and problem solving are among the many qualities that make Jessica a strong PM. He said she does a great job of keeping clients informed and does what's needed to make sure their needs are met, but she's not afraid to push back when necessary. And that's the critical component of project management, and I know for sure that Jessica talks about this in her presentation today. So Jessica, let's bring you on. Jessica Adams, welcome.
Thank you so much, Vicki, for that wonderful introduction and for everybody for joining us today. During today's event, my intent is to provide you with some actionable items that you can implement now that will have an immediate impact on your projects. I would like for this presentation to be interactive. So please use the chat window to ask any questions or share any thoughts that you have. And I'll try to include them either in the content that I'm presenting or at the end of the presentation. So let's go ahead and get started. Today's presentation is called Great PMs Give a, well, I'm sure you can fill in the blanks there. I titled it not because I swear like a sailor, which I sometimes do, but because it's true. To be a great PM, you do have to care. So project managers can be known as the one throat to choke. And what that means is you are the one person who is always client facing, and therefore you receive all of the feedback, both good and bad, for everything involved with the project. If something goes wrong, it's your fault. If something is wonderful, also your fault, which is nice, but it can be rather stressful. You can quickly go from being the hero to the villain in a blink of an eye. So you're working on a design project and your team and you deliver an outstanding first round of creative to the client. They love it. You guys are fantastic. You delivered it ahead of schedule, which means you probably did it for less than the budget. It looks amazing. Everybody's in love with you. Then they want to make some changes. Some of those can be bigger changes, some of them might be little changes, but they all add up to enough that it's going to impact your schedule and your budget, and you have to let the client know. All of a sudden now you're the villain. Why is this trending off topic? Why can't we get this back on schedule? Why do we have to wait for it? So you get that side of the things as well. You can also feel like the rope in the tug of war between your team and the client. So your team needs certain things in order to get their job done. The client wants certain things in order to get their project done. And you are that go-between the two of them. So how on earth do you not only deal with all of that, but make it so you excel both personally and professionally? And that is, the topic today. Great PMs give a, there's a little emoticon to picturize what we're talking about. There's a lot of information out there about what makes a PM great. There are articles and studies that you can read up on, just Google it, all of them come up. But what it really boils down to is caring about your client and being proud of the work that you and your team are doing. You have to take ownership of that, and you have to be part of a team in order to excel. So how do we excel? Let's start off with one of the hardest concepts for people to understand about project managers. You are not going to be everybody's friend. Unfortunately, that's just not going to happen. I'm not saying you're out to make enemies, but some of your decisions may not sit well with individuals. But your decisions should be based on what is best for your project, your company, and not because you're worried somebody is going to get upset. You need to care about your client and your deliverable and your team. Team members who are really committed to their roles and to the organization that you work for are going to understand the position that you're going to have to take on occasion and are going to respect you for it and will do all that they can to help. Some of your team members are going to fight you on that, and really you have to start to question, are those the best team members for your team if they're not seeing that larger picture of you've got to do what's right by the client and your team. I want to start off today's presentation with an example. So one of the clients that we work with is the Peace Corps, and they have been absolutely fantastic to work with over the years. They came to us a couple of years ago with an annual report that they needed some help with. We talked about what the needs were based on the creative brief that they sent over, and our usual team that we would assemble for this type of project wasn't available because of workload. So we reached out to our extended team, and who could we leverage to be a part of this project? My supervisor at the time recommended an individual, and I had worked with the individual in the past. He was fantastic at quick turn projects, but I had never seen his creative. But I was assured this was going to work out. It was going to be fantastic. Everything was going to be wonderful. So we had the kickoff call with the client. It went very well. The client was very gracious with providing what their goals were for the project, what we should and should not do. They wanted sans serif fonts, what we needed to make the graphics look like, what type of images responded better with their audience. So it was a wonderful presentation by the client of what they were expecting. And we asked tons of questions and we felt good. After the call, I circled back with the designer, talked to the designer. You understand what they were looking for. You have any questions? Do I need to provide you with anything? And he said, no, I've got it. It's great. I said, great. I know we're not supposed to deliver something to them until next week, but why don't you spend the next day and a half working on some rough sketches? We can take a look at it and make sure we're headed down the right path before we get too far. Great, perfect, wonderful. So day and a half went by, followed up with them. Oh, they're coming, they're coming. So they finally came, and they were literally the exact opposite of everything that the client asked for. Exactly the opposite. So we were in an uncomfortable situation because, well, I was in an uncomfortable situation as well as the designer because it was everything that we weren't supposed to do. And when I questioned him on it, he said, I don't understand what you mean. This is what we talked about. I said, no, it's not. And clearly the write-up from the call detailed out what we were expecting. And it was very, very clear that the creativity for this particular designer did not align with the client project. So what we ended up doing, and it was an uncomfortable, like I said, position to be in because we had to pull that designer. And he wasn't too happy about being pulled, and the supervisor who recommended him wasn't too happy about him being pulled. But for the benefit of the client and for the company that I was working with, we had to make sure that we had the right team working on this. So we pulled in another designer. We were able to rework some schedules and get the right team members in place. And in the end, we created a stellar document for the client. They were excited. It was one of the most downloaded annual reports in their history. It took them in a completely new creative direction, more magazine focused, kind of something you want to pick up and read as opposed to just facts and figures and numbers, which typical annual reports are. And it ended up being a really big success for them and a big success for the team. At the post-mortem, we went back and we talked to everyone. including the original designer. And afterwards, the designer pulled me aside and said, hey, I'm actually kind of glad you pulled me. At the time, I didn't see it, but seeing your finished product now really impresses me that I wasn't the right guy for this. And you guys did a great job, and I actually respect the work that you guys did. And thank you for, at least considering me for future projects. So the end was fantastic. There was that little hiccup in the beginning, but as a PM, you've got to be able to overcome those obstacles and those challenges. So that brings us to, as a PM, you've got to get your projects done and have them done right. And in order to do that, you've got to make those uncomfortable decisions. One of the areas that was highlighted in that example was leading your team. As a PM, even if those people don't report directly to you, they do when they are involved in the projects that you are overseeing. Leading your team can apply not only to leading your internal team doing the work, but can apply to your client as well. How to engage your team, how to empower your team, some of the topics we're going to talk about today could be a seminar in and of itself. We don't have time for all that. We want to get to some key points that you can take and you can use in your everyday job that'll make an impact now. So what we want to focus in on is some things that you can do. And that is a simple one. Be a role model. You don't want your team seeing you lose it. You don't want them seeing you running around crazy because a deadline's coming up and you're stressed. You want to see cool, composed attitude. If your team sees you freaking out, chances are they're going to freak out. If your client sees you freaking out, they're going to freak out. So what can you do to be a role model? What this means is dig in. Roll up your sleeves. It's time for some hands-on stuff. Besides presenting a very positive attitude looking forward, you want to understand what your team is responsible for and what they're doing. As a PM, you need to know everything and anything about the projects your team is working on and what they're capable of. I am not talking about being a micromanager. I am talking about learning. You need to sit with your team. Observe what they are doing, have them describe their processes, why they do certain things, and then in some cases, if you're able, try doing it yourself. If you put yourself in their shoes, you're going to get a better understanding of what goes into their portion of the project. You're also going to see if there's any areas that you guys as a team can improve on. Are there any bottlenecks? What's slowing you down if they have to enter stuff into multiple systems? Why does that happen? How can you avoid that so it frees up some of that time? Through your understanding that you gain from talking with them and trying the things that you're doing, you can help them define other ways of doing things that might help speed up your process. As I mentioned, I'm going to provide a few actionable items for you throughout the presentation today. So here's the first one. As it relates to your team, spend about 10 to 20 minutes with each of your team members. And I encourage this if you keep adding people to your team. As a new team member comes on, sit down with them for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, understand, listen, observe, understand, try what they're doing. This insight is going to provide you with a new perspective when it comes to scheduling projects and the budgets that are associated with them. If you think that it only takes 5 minutes to open up an image file, retouch a couple of things, save it back out and stick it back in the document, and that's what you're planning for, but in actuality, it takes your team 15 minutes, you're shortchanging them and you're shortchanging your budget. So getting this will give you a better understanding of what the team is going through, and you're going to gain some respect from your team for taking an interest in them and the work that they're doing. We've got a question here. It says, what happens when you don't have additional designers to pull from? That's a great question. You're going to have to pull in the resources that you have. And when I say that, I'm talking about, can you rework a schedule? Can you adjust a schedule that another designer is on to accommodate being able to take on this new project? So can that one be turned in a little bit later? Is that deadline a little further out? Training is important. We'll talk about that later for yourself and your team, but having them try out new skill sets before projects come up is important. So there's different things that you can do. Along the same lines of being a role model, you need to be 100% honest and don't hide things. So no wolf in sheep's clothing here. We want to be honest with our team and honest with our clients. This goes back to not being everybody's friend. Telling people unpleasant things is never fun, but it is an important part of project management. If you are going to miss a deadline, tell your client in advance. Explain what needs to be done to ensure that no other problems are going to come forward. So you're working on a project and your team is fully deployed on it, and all of a sudden something happens. The power goes out in your building, the server crashes, you lose half a day's worth of work. That is not your team's fault. That is not your client's fault. That is, just an accident that has occurred. But it's going to impact when you're able to deliver it, especially if your delivery is by the end of the day, because there's no time to recover from that. Tell your client. Be honest with them. Be upfront with them. This is what happened. This is how we're going to fix it. They are going to respect you for that, and you're going to build that rapport with them that you're looking out for them. And it's going to give them the time to educate their team. They've got people that they're accountable to, and it's going to give them the opportunity to talk to them and plan on their end so that they can set expectations. Be accountable for your mistakes or oversights. Don't pass the blame. That's one of the worst things that you can do within your team as well as with your client. Own them. This is why it happened. We missed that completely when we were proofreading this. We must have accepted the changes and that one got missed. I'm so sorry. Let me take care of that for you. If you have to, because it was a big mistake, let me take care of that for you and assure them this is not going to set back your schedule and you're not going to have to pay for that mistake. Own it. By owning it and involving your client earlier on, like I mentioned, you're going to give them the opportunity to reset expectations on their end, and that is extremely important for building that relationship with your client. Honesty also applies to your team. Don't hide feedback from a client or sugarcoat it for your team. If a team member is working on something and it gets sent over to the client and the client comes back and hates it, hates everything about it, doesn't like the color, doesn't like the font, doesn't like the software you used, whatever it is, share that feedback with your team member. Clear, direct feedback will allow the team to get a better understanding of what your client's needs are and help them to recalibrate the understanding of what is involved in that project. So talk to them. Be honest with them. Give them that feedback. We've got another question that came in. How do you manage team members who complain it's not my job when you ask them to jump in and help a coworker? Oh my goodness, we've got some good questions today. So we're a team. That means we all work together. You need to sit them down. We either all succeed together or we all fail together. Chip in, help out, have that conversation with them. It's all about talking to your team and having them realize why it's so important to be able to support each other. So talking to your team, being honest, always deliver less than favorable news face-to-face, or if necessary, do it on a call if you're not all in the same location. The reason for this is you give the person the opportunity to talk about it. So they made a black and white ad instead of a color one. That's a big mistake. Why did you make it black and white? Give them the opportunity to talk about it. Maybe that was something that came up in a call that you weren't privy to. Maybe they found in the specs that the client sent over, that was a requirement from a publication that you're creating it for. These are all things that can be identified if you're talking to someone. Maybe it really was just a mistake. But again, giving them the opportunity to talk about it is going to soften your message and give them a chance to think through how a solution can be created going forward. All right. So I just said to be 100% honest, but now I'm going to contradict myself a little bit, and I'm going to say it's okay to lie a little bit. So as a project manager, a good rule of thumb is to always under-promise and over-deliver. PMs sometimes have what's called a hero complex. You want to be the one that swoops in and saves the day, and one of the best ways to do that is to deliver projects before they're due, deliver them under budget. And that's great, and you get that wonderful little rush of, woohoo, I saved the day. But it does cause problems when you do that too frequently, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But as a project manager, it's a good idea to pad an extra day or a few additional hours into your client schedule and not tell the team. Not saying if you got, a moral standard that you don't want to lie to them, just omit that information. But adding that little bit of padding in beforehand that the team doesn't necessarily know about gives you the opportunity to recover if something does go wrong. So if your team thinks that it's due at 3 o'clock and you tell them that you need files at 1 o'clock, that gives you time if you see something, or if they catch something, or if something happens, that they can recover and you're not going to miss your deadline. And if you don't need it, you get that wonderful little hero's rush. There is a warning, though, that goes along with this. Be careful not to pad too much on your schedules or deceive your team about, hey, it's due on Tuesday, but it's really not due till Thursday. That's going to cause your team to rush and possibly sacrifice parts of your projects, or not have it be as successful as it would have been if they were able to work the entire schedule. The other thing is, if you continuously deliver projects too early, or if they're always under budget, then your client's going to come to expect that from you. So rule of thumb for a longer project, add an extra day to your schedule to cover getting the design or the program or the software from your team that you're developing for your client and testing it and giving one more set of eyes to it before delivering it. Or if it's a very short project, 2 to 3 hours. The next area I'd like to discuss with you is empowerment. You do not need to be the only person on the team doing everything. You have a team. That's what they're there for. We talked about that with the question that came in from the audience. You need to empower them. And you need to empower your client as well. No one can do it all alone and do it well. You need that team and you need that support. The more value they feel, or the more valued that they feel, is going to really influence their ability to openly share suggestions and ideas and want to put some feedback or some thought or suggestions into the project going forward. So empower your team to step up in client meetings. They're the SMEs, they're the subject matter experts. Have them discuss, describe, or demonstrate their work. Have them present their materials. You don't need to be the only voice on these calls. Encourage them to become a subject matter expert in a particular part of their field. This way, they can then impart that knowledge on the rest of the team, and your team can grow together. It's a good idea to have your team collaborate and share knowledge between them. As one person grows, the rest of your team can grow as well. So have them get in there, have them be a part of your meetings. One takeaway that you can implement after this call is, before your next client meeting, Spend a few minutes discussing with your team what part of the meeting they would like to be responsible for. Have them pick that out. Encourage them to select a topic area and allow them to lead that as you're talking to the client. This will not only build confidence in your team, but your client's going to see that you really did bring subject matter experts to their project. For our clients, to empower them, you want them to feel like their voice, their project matters, that you are focused on them and their needs. You need to create a relationship with them where they feel that they can be open and honest. Encourage them to voice their ideas and their concerns and questions at any time and respond to them quickly. You don't want a client who keeps all of their opinions to themselves, and then at the very end of the project is like, this isn't what I wanted at all, you need to completely redo it. And now you've missed your schedule, you've blown the budget, it's going to be very hard to recover from that. Or worse yet, you don't address the client concerns because they don't bring them to you and they walk away and they never work with you again. So as an option for building that respect with your client and empowering them, when your client emails you, calls you, whatever it is, if you're really busy, that's okay. We all know we've got clients that need things 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we can't get to them all at this exact second. But what you can do is let them know that you saw it. Try responding to clients as quickly as possible. You don't have to have all of the answers right away. You don't. Just sending them a quick note that says you received their message, that you're reviewing it, you will get with the team if you need to, and you'll get back to them as quickly as possible, will make them feel valued and like they are the top priority. It'll give them confidence that you are working on it, that you saw it, you understood it, and you'll be surprised what a difference it makes, making them feel more in control of their own project. We've got another question that came in. How do you handle clients who don't respect business hours? I have 2 who call me on my cell phone all hours, including weekends. So you need to set that expectation up front when you are working on your engagement. There are clients that are like that. And one of the things that you need to do is, have an open and honest, frank conversation with them. Do you really need support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? We can supply that for you. There's going to be some type of cost that goes along with that. And most chances are when you say something like that, hey, we're happy to do that for you. I am willing to set somebody up to be here for you whenever you need. But there's going to be a premium on that. Okay, I bet you they'll start calling you at all hours of the day. Or try to set up a plan with them ahead of time. Here's when we are available. Here's what we can get done during that time. Do you see anything that you're going to need going forward? Is one way to approach it. There's tons of different ways, but hopefully one of those will work for you. So we talked about leading your team and empowering them, and some items you can implement to help with that. The next area I'd like to cover is communication. Communication is another area that is going to make you a rock star PM. Good communication is essential to making sure that jobs are completed by the deadline and that you're doing them according to what the client needed. So when we're talking about communication, we're talking about keeping everybody on the same page. Make sure that when you have meetings, that you summarize the meetings with written notes and send them to the client and your internal team immediately following the conversation. Don't wait. Take your notes during the meeting and then send out. They don't have to be long, detailed notes. They can be bullet points. But send them out immediately following. This way, it's fresh in everyone's mind. You can use those notes to clarify that everything in the call was interpreted correctly and that everybody is on the same page. Notes should be sent as a summary for short phone calls as well, where decisions are made. So if a client calls you up and they're like, I've decided I want to go with this software versus that software, and it needs to have this particular application associated with it if you're in development. Mark that down in an email, send it back to them. Hey, thanks for the call. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to confirm we're moving forward with what we discussed, XYZ. It's in writing. This is the common practice CYA, or cover your butt. We all know what that is. That make sure that we've got it documented and everybody's on the same page. Make sure in your communications that you call out your next steps and action items. Next steps and action items are awesome in your notes because they can be used as the checklist, not only for your team, but the client's team as well. Clients have responsibilities in projects just as much as we do. And if you list out, you are responsible for providing XYZ, and this is when it's due, as well as we are going to do XYZ, and this is when we're going to do it. The teams can print out those sheets and use them as their checklist of what needs to be done and when it needs to be done. As I mentioned, take your notes and save them. Save your notes. So don't just send them, but you want to save them and put them away so that you have something to reference back to in the future. When you're providing notes, always try to use plain language in your verbal and written communications. No big words, no complicated explanations. It just dilutes your message and wastes time. It's going to confuse people, and they're going to lose focus on what your overall goal is. My next topic is probably my favorite, as it goes a long way in making a project successful and making you a successful project manager, and that is fake it till you make it. Continuous learning is an important part of any role. It's especially important for PMs since no project is ever going to be the same, and the technology that we're using and our clients need is constantly evolving. I'm sure you're expecting me to tell you that you should go and take some classes, and you should. Continuing education is very important. But today, like I said, I'm trying to focus on actionable items for you. And today we're going to talk about what I like to call becoming a pretend SME. Some people don't like that term, but let me explain what I mean. When a client requests a new project or deliverable type that you may not be 100% familiar with or comfortable with, you need to dig in like we talked about previously. This is the true fake it till you make it scenario. Your client presents you with a new project, and you're not exactly sure what goes into that project. What's going to be involved? What are the technical requirements of it? What are the specs? What are the pitfalls? Before your project kickoff call, sit down and research that deliverable. Go online and Google it. If there's a comparable application out there that the competitor is using or created, download it, try it, get some hands-on experience. Sit down with your team members or your colleagues and ask them what their knowledge base of this is. Get their experiences and understand what the basics of it are, or of what the basics of that project would be. You are doing this not to become a true expert, not to pretend that you know everything, but you want to be able to talk intelligently about what the client is requesting. You want to build their confidence in the fact that we've got the right team for this. They know what they're doing. Think through the pitfalls. Think through, what could be a problem with developing a project like this, and bring that up in your kickoff meeting. Hey, in other projects I've heard this could be an issue. Have you guys thought that through? What do you want, what were your thoughts on that? Or were you even aware of it? And we can make sure that we're planning for it. So, as your takeaway, after the client summarizes their needs in an email to you, have your kickoff call. Talk about it. Have them discuss again what they were looking for. And as they're talking, state your understanding of what that project is. Again, reiterate it to them so that they know you were listening. Highlight the list of benefits and challenges that you uncovered and that were associated with them, and allow the team to discuss them. You've got a whole SME team. Everybody on your team should be a subject matter expert in some part of this project, so let them talk about it. Having these conversations with your client, having the pretend knowledge of this project. You're not the expert, but you know enough to be dangerous. You're going to garner your client and your team's respect by going that extra step and having the ability to think through projects, even if it's not one that you've executed before. So keeping in mind as a PM, you need to be a role model. You need to lead and empower your team. You need to be knowledgeable about your client needs and your deliverables. You've got to get your products done and get them done well. I'm going to focus on our next topic, and that is your to-do list and your prioritization and getting your ducks in a row. So let's imagine all of the things I just mentioned are balls that you're juggling. Balls are all in the air and you need to keep them all up there until the right time, and you need them all to come down at the right time, in the right place, in the right order. As a PM, that's what you're responsible for, making sure everything gets done at the same time. Some days it can feel like you're drowning in balls. You can just be going underwater because you've got so many things going and your mind can only focus on so many things. One of the best ways to combat this problem is to make a to-do list. It's a simple thing. You can do it with Outlook in the notes section. You can do it with any of the free mobile apps that are out there. You can use expensive project management software, or my preference is just a simple scratch pad. There are tons of studies out there, including one that was done in 1927 from the Russian psychologist Dr. Zygarnik, who explains the inner nag, or the Zygarnik effect. And that is that little voice that's in the back of your head that wants you to finish an uncompleted or unresolved task. Professors Baumeister and Mezzacampo verified uncompleted warm-up tasks can interfere with subsequent tasks. Think about that. So you start your day, you're in the middle of something, the phone rings, you get taken off a task, you come back and you're kind of flustered. You don't know where you left off, you don't know where to pick up again. So that's one of the things that they focused on. And more recently, a gentleman by the name of David Allen identified a system that he calls Getting Things Done that breaks up your projects into short, specific, doable tasks and has you write them down to allow you to free your mind. Making a list of actionable items and then crossing those items off of that list gives you this actual fantastic little dose of dopamine. And dopamine is that kick-butt chemical in your brain that makes you feel happy. Crossing items off the list also frees your mind so that you feel better able to focus on other tasks and more satisfied with the work you're doing. You just need a simple piece of paper next to your computer that has a running list of all of your top priorities for the day. If it's too overwhelming for that entire list for the day, try just for the next hour. By writing them down, it's scientifically proven to release that inner nag and let you focus on finishing those tasks. So my takeaway is next time you're feeling stressed, make that list and cross the items off as you go. Make them as small as you need to. Focus on one item at a time, and that's going to allow you to think more clearly and keep you from drowning in that ball pit. We're coming to the end of the presentation, and my final topic is one that sounds pretty horrible. I don't mean it to sound as negative as it's going to come across, but the final parting thing that I want to leave you with is don't trust anyone. Now, like I said, I know it seems a bit harsh, but being a great PM involves taking responsibility for everything. As I said before, we're not talking about micromanaging. We are talking about checking in and not assuming. How's it going? Did you hit any roadblocks? Just a reminder, the project's due on Friday. Do you need any other help, or are you doing pretty good? It's just as simple as that. I recently took an Agile project manager's training this past year. And one of the things that I took away from the training was this fantastic thing called the Scrum meeting. Besides having a fabulous name, it is just really a easy way of, or fun way of saying, a 5-minute meeting every day where your team comes together and shares what they completed yesterday, what they're planning to complete today, and what, if any, they have roadblocks on. That's it, no more. The information is not in depth, it's just high level, so you can make sure that everybody is staying on the same page. We talked about that before, and that their focus is on what actually needs to be accomplished instead of getting bogged down in something that could wait until another time. Like I said, it's 5 minutes in length, that's it. So divide up those 5 minutes amongst your team members, and they answer those 3 things. What did you complete yesterday? What do you need to complete today? And do you have any bottlenecks? You can't ask any questions. Any further discussion about anything is held offline. This is just a check-in. So making sure that everybody's on the same page and they're comfortable with where they're going. Checking in and following up applies not only to your team, but also to your clients. So you should have regular milestone or check-in points with your external team, which is your client team as well. Are they getting what they need? How do they feel that the project is going? When are they going to be giving you those extra files that you needed in order to be able to create something that your team is working on? It gives you the opportunity to develop that relationship more than just, here's your stuff, okay, I'll talk to you when you need something else. Check in, understand where everybody's coming from. It doesn't need to be frequent. You don't want to be pestering them. Again, no micromanaging. It's just to make sure that everybody's able to get the roles done. Another thing that goes along with this is double checking everything. So you are that one throat to choke. You're the last person who sees the things before they send it off to the client. So you need to make sure you're 100% knowledgeable and satisfied with what you are sending over to the client. Our takeaway for this section, and it's the last takeaway we're going to have today, is for each client review cycle, regardless of the type of product you're developing, review the client's revisions that they sent over, their notes, their markups, against what you're sending to make sure that all of the edits were captured. Even if the other team members are supposed to do that, we're human. Nobody's perfect, and we don't want you to be. So just give it that one more pass on it. If your team was not able to make one of the edits, or if they had to do something that wasn't necessarily called out, have them provide bullet points that summarize what they did when they send over the files for you to share with the client. This way, you can include those bullet points and catch any embarrassing oversights before they ever get to the client. And by providing those bullet points summarizing why you did what you did, it's going to alleviate, any problems. How come you did this? Why did you do that? That you hear from the client all too often, because you're giving them the answers up front. And that, again, is going to keep them in the know and on the same page as you. So, in conclusion, we really only started scratching the surface of what goes into being a great project manager today. The takeaways I provided have made a significant impact on the projects, the teams, and the clients I have worked with over the years. I hope that by implementing some of these items, rethinking areas that you may not have been as focused on before, or just listening to me who has been in your shoes, leaves you feeling a little bit more empowered and inspired, that you're not out there doing it all by yourself. Great PMs give a beep, well, again, you can fill in that last word, about their teams, their clients, and the work that they produce. If they didn't, the work that you would be producing is really, well, exactly, that word. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I appreciate you spending your time with us.
Well, Jessica, that was awesome. I love your deck. And thank you so much for explaining why great PMs give a bleep. We did have a question come in, and before we get into our Q&A, if it's okay with you, I'll just throw this out at you. How do you handle a situation when someone doesn't come through and you're at risk of missing a deadline? I know from listening to you talk there that you're super organized. So tell us how you'd handle that situation.
So one, you want to try to avoid that. And that is, again, going kind of back to empowering your team. Having that person feel comfortable enough to tell you that something's going on in advance, that it's going to impact your project. And then telling your client in advance, so that you're not waiting up until the minute that it's due and being like, oh yeah, by the way, that's not going to happen today. Sorry. That's not a good way to build rapport. If you see it coming and there is literally nothing that you can do to ward it off, like I said, give that advanced warning to the team. your client team so that they can plan on their side. And then when you're providing that, also explain why it happened and what you're going to do going forward. So it happened because we didn't have enough resources on this project. So what you need to do is then pull in additional resources going forward to make sure that you have the right team members working on it for you.
Right. Well, that's the great thing about Aquent Federal. You have the capacity to do that. One of the people I spoke with before we did the webcast was Vice President Jeff Garner, and he said that he stressed how process and organized you are, how you focus on process, and that all of your processes are documented so that they're followed consistently and they can quickly be transferred to other people. So I'm guessing that helps you in these kind of situations. I'm guessing you don't have many missed deadlines, if any.
Yeah, we try not to. And like I said, that Scrum meeting that we've been having every morning really has made an impact in allowing us as a team to focus our efforts to make sure that we're avoiding those things. And you know, I'm in training to become a Scrum Master. I love that title, and I think that's half of the reason why I want to do it, besides the fact that it adds in some new areas of expertise when it comes to managing projects. But you need to be agile. So processes are great, and I love them, and I do document a lot of things, but you also need to be flexible. So know when you have to follow certain things, and then know when you're going to have to deviate from them to be able to accomplish tasks. We should always be supporting our clients and the needs and their wants. So if they come in with a change request, make sure that you are able to shift gears to be able to support them, as long as you know their budget supports it and your timeline does.
Right, right. So, well, let's talk about scope creep just a wee bit here, because this could be a whole other webcast in itself. But I mean, you work with accounts such as within the intelligence community, the IRS, TSA, USDA, and Peace Corps, and I'm guessing that you have very quickly changing scope at times. I'm guessing you have to scale up and scale down quite often on projects like that. So let's talk about how you nip scope creep in the bud before it becomes an issue.
Well, I don't think that I've ever had a project that didn't have some type of scope creep.
Right.
One of your roles as a project manager is to anticipate it, and you can do that by implementing some of the things that I talked about previously, and that is stay on top of your client requests and your budget. Good communication is going to make you a rock star. Share your budget on a weekly basis if you have a longer term project, or every couple of days if it's a quick turn project, so that the client is just as aware of it as you are, how you're trending with the figures. Have a weekly status call with where we're at with our different deliverables and what do you see coming forward with this project, so you can plan accordingly. And then be open and honest with them. I know I mentioned that before as well, about what their additional requests are going to do to the project. So again, you want to be agile, you want to be flexible, you want to be able to incorporate their ideas and their thoughts and stuff. But as they're bringing up all of these wonderful things, don't keep adding them to the pile without bringing up the fact that this is going to shift something else. We can do X, Y, Z, but ABC is going to have to suffer, or we're going to have to build out this project larger. So before those impact the overall project, make sure you talk about them with your client, so that they understand that it is actually indeed going to impact it, and then get them sign off on it. So at the end, you're not billing them for something that they're like, why do I get extra billed for this? Well, we already discussed it.
Right. And I want to, while we're talking about that, let's talk about your favorite subject, metrics. Some folks are all about the numbers. They kind of lose sight of the deliverables and the creatives. They're so focused on, I'm sure you've worked with people like that. I've worked with project managers like this too. They're so focused on getting their reports together and their stats together that, to heck with the project. And you and I have talked about this before, so I wonder if you'd just share your perspective on how you handle client and project metrics, because they are requested.
They are, and metrics are important. They're extremely important for measuring the success of how projects went, not only from your perspective, but for the client's perspective. Was it worth the money and time that they invested with you and your company to do this, and what was the return on that? Metrics help you evaluate things like that. The most important thing that you can do when it comes to metrics is to define them at the beginning of an engagement or the start of a project. So you're meeting with a client for the very first time. It's the first project you're going to be working on with them. Define what metrics are going to be important for them so you can capture them from the start. There are tons of software programs out there, and Vicki, I know you and I have talked about this. Some of them are great, especially if you have long-term projects, like if you have a development project that's going to last many, many months. It's fantastic to put it into a project management software tool because it's going to help you with those metrics capturing. It's going to help you figure out what your turn times are and where your bottlenecks are, and it's going to keep everybody on task by alerting them. But if you have really short, quick turn projects, like a lot in the design field, that ends up being more work than actually doing the project itself. So,
right.
Define upfront what is most important to your client, and then figure out the best way to track that. Maybe it's just a manual spreadsheet that you track it in because they are only looking for a few things. Maybe you do have to implement a much larger system, but you've got to define it upfront because trying to capture them after the fact is so much harder, as I'm sure you already know.
Right. So you mentioned earlier that you're becoming a Scrum Master and that you want everyone on your team to be a subject matter expert. We had a question come in asking how much of a subject matter expert should you be as a PM? Because it's a juggling role there, right?
It is. That's where I'm using air quotes though you can't see them. Pretends me comes about. So you don't have to be the expert. You should be experts in certain things like, scoping projects and helping to define requirements and managing timelines and motivating your team. But when it comes to the individual deliverables, you should know enough to talk intelligently to your team and to your client. We mentioned before, you want to be able to carry on conversations. You want to be able to plan for, what are the challenges with this particular project going to be? And you can get that information rather easily by sitting down and talking with your team. Googling it. Googling is fantastic. Everything comes up nowadays. You got to be careful, of course, what comes up and verify it, but at least it'll give you a direction to be pointed in. If you are a design project manager, get familiar with the basics of design. Don't rely on, like I said, don't trust everyone. That's kind of harsh. I understand when I say it, but what I mean is don't rely on everybody to have to do everything for you. You should have enough knowledge base to refer back to something and know when to question something or to bring in somebody else to take a look at it.
Yeah, great advice. I think preparation up front, and if a question comes up that you don't know how to answer, I don't think that's not the end of the world. You just need to know where and how to find that answer for them.
Exactly. But one of the worst things that you could do is, as the client's talking about it on the phone, be like, no, I've never heard of that. And everybody just looks at you. Well, why are you working on my project then?
Right. Because
that pre-prep, you don't have to be perfect. You don't actually have to be the expert in it. You've got a team for that. Or you'll build your team because of that. But being able to know the questions to ask, know where to look to find the answers, like you said, is the important thing.
Right. You've talked a lot about clients and team empowerment, and you've talked a lot about meeting the client's needs, setting expectations. But let's face it, we've all been there. There are some people nothing makes them happy. And in my experience, it's usually because they're coming from a place of fear. They're fearful that they don't know what really should go into the project or what it's going to look like at the end, or they really don't know what they want. I wonder if you'd share your experience on that with us and how you handle it.
Sure. Well, like you said, we've all been there. You're going to end up somewhere with a client that no matter what you do, it's never going to be enough, or it's not what they had in mind, or they're just unhappy. In some cases, that's a real thing. Something really went wrong and you really have to deal with it and they're just upset about it. Maybe they're a great client otherwise, but on this one project, this is just wrong. Like you said, it may be that something on their end is riding on this. Maybe they're up for a promotion and how well they do on this particular project is going to relate into that. So if it doesn't go well, it's their neck on the line on their side of things. Their anger, if they're angry, their unhappiness with something may also be driven by something not related to your project at all, and yours just came across the desk at the wrong time. The best thing that I have found with clients in those situations is to have a conversation with them. Again, I hate to keep, sounding like I'm just beating a dead horse, but be open and honest and have them talk to you. And when you talk to them, ask them to summarize what it is that they perceive to be the issue. What do you see as being the problem here? And have them also summarize how they want it to be resolved. Having them walk through that in their own mind and having them articulate that to you is going to help them think it through as well. And a lot of the time they start calming down because they start explaining it. I am so upset about this project because it's blue. Oh, it's blue. Okay. What's wrong with the color blue? What part of blue did you not like? And when you start down that path, they realize that, oh my God, I'm just throwing this fit because it's blue and it should have been green. And all I could have done was just told them. And I didn't happen to bring that up to them. I found when you have the option, when you have the ability to sit there and listen to them, let them talk, let them get it all out. No matter how angry they are, just let them get it out. Don't interrupt them. Don't try to be defensive or try to stop them from talking. I mean, as long as they're not being verbally abusive, if they're just venting, let them go. Once they get it all out, usually you can have a pretty good, honest conversation with them about what happened and how you can fix it, and you come to an understanding together.
Right. I think those kind of meetings, it's not always possible today because we work with clients all over, but if we can do face-to-face time, I think those are always better because we get to see the body language too, and it creates a better connection.
Some clients are just, I'm sorry, some clients you're unfortunately, even if you do that, they're still not going to be happy clients. There's sometimes that you're going to have to make a decision to part ways. If you see a project trending, so somebody brings it to your attention that you have an issue, you try to deal with it, and it's still an issue. Make sure that you're looping in your upper management so that they know what's going on, so none of this is a surprise. Talk about what you can do to try to alleviate some of their concerns going forward, whether maybe it's a credit, maybe it's a rework of something because it was an actual issue that you should have addressed early on. But if it is the case that it's just so bad that you're not going to be able to come to a compromise, sometimes you have to walk away and make sure you have your documentation in place and that you've looped in your management team and that this is a decision that you all make together instead of, it being a surprise afterwards.
Yeah, excellent advice. So this is my last question for you, Jessica, and I love this question for a number of reasons. I think if you're just starting out as a PM, it's a great learning opportunity here. And the question is, what do you know now as a project manager that you wish to goodness you'd known when you first started out?
Oh, there's a lot of things I wish I knew. Probably the one that I struggled the most with when I first started was trying to please everyone. Like I talked about, you're that rope in the tug of war between your client and your team. And trying to please everyone doesn't always come with the best results. Early on, I spent a lot of time trying to make everybody happy. A designer wouldn't be doing the very best job on something, and I would try to find a way around that. Maybe I had somebody else work up a concept too and just never told them about it. That's awful and terrible. Don't do that. it's just,
that goes back to that you don't always lie a little sometimes.
Yeah. It's just, when I started, I didn't want to hurt their feelings. You know, they were proud of the work that they did, and I didn't want to hurt their feelings. I didn't see it as coming from a place that if I had explained it to them, it could be a potential to help them grow, as well as to better help them understand our client and what they were looking for. I also used to get a lot of pressure to get more projects. And in some cases, more projects meant having to reduce our budgets down. And again, trying to please everybody, I'd reduce them down so much that when we actually got the project, you know, we were running up against, you know, budget overages because there wasn't enough time scheduled. Again, trying to please everyone doesn't get you anywhere. You were hired for a particular job, and you need to put your focus on doing that job in the very best way that you can. So some of the decisions you make are not always going to be favorable, but if you're always coming from that point of view, how am I going to be able to do the very best job that I can? I think makes all of the difference and eventually trickles down to the other areas. Like that Peace Corps job I talked about, you know, how do I do the very best job I can? That is removing that designer. Not a favorable thing at the front part. They weren't pleased with me. But in the end, it turned out a very successful project. It turned out that the client was very happy. It turned out that the internal team was happy. He got to learn something and grow from the experience. So it was a positive all the way around. So that's probably the one that I put out there the most.
Great. Well, it sounds like that was a win-win for everyone. So Jessica, thank you. Jessica Adams, just amazing presentation, great deck. I loved it. And Jessica, of course, is the account director and program manager for Aquent. And you can see here some of the clients that Aquent works with, Aquent Federal works with, and some of the clients that Jessica has overseen their projects, right, Jessica?
Yes.
Yeah. So in case you want to get more information about Aquent Federal, how you can work with them, I have a lovely lady here, Leigh Andrews. She's the Vice President of Aquent Federal. And I'm going to read out her telephone number for those who might not be looking at the video here. You can reach Leigh at 410-975-4183. She's an extremely busy person, but she's also one of the most accessible people that I've worked with, and she picks up that phone. So if you have any questions at all about Aquent Federal, how they can work with you, how you can partner with them, Leigh's the person to call, Leigh Andrews, and again, her phone number, 410-975-4183. All right, we ran a little bit over there, but there was such great information. I didn't want to cut Jessica short there. So thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it. Look out for next month's webcast. We'll be sending invites out shortly. Thanks again.